It was January 27th, 2026 at 2:47 a.m. when a dream so vivid and disturbing drove me from my bed to the desert oasis 30 miles outside the city, and there, surrounded by ancient palm trees that swayed like worshippers in the pre-dawn darkness, their fronds whispering secrets against a sky ablaze with more stars than I'd ever seen, the reflecting pool before me mirror smooth and black as obsidian, Jesus appeared with such tangible presence that I fell to my knees on the cool sand, and he spoke words that shattered everything I thought I knew about where believers need to position themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally when February 2026 begins. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. You've been marked because you didn't stumble upon this video by accident. The algorithm didn't randomly suggest it. God himself orchestrated this moment, this exact second, where your eyes meet these words, where my voice reaches your ears. And what I'm about to share with you over these next few nights will either transform your understanding of obedience and positioning, or you'll dismiss it and face February completely unprepared for what's coming. Before I continue, I need you to do something. Drop your prayer requests in the comments right now. Don't wait until the end. Do it now, because there are thousands of you watching, and I can't personally respond to everyone, but I read them, I pray over them, and more importantly, this act of vulnerability, of reaching out, it positions your heart to receive what Jesus showed me in that desert oasis. It opens you up, and if you're serious about being part of this community of true believers who don't just consume content but actually want to encounter the living God, hit that subscribe button. This isn't about numbers for me. This is about identifying the remnant, the ones who are hungry, the ones who are desperate enough to listen when God speaks in unconventional ways. Now, some of you know me as Jonathan Roumie. You know me as the actor who portrays Jesus in The Chosen. And I want to be clear about something right from the start. What I'm sharing with you has nothing to do with a television show. This isn't acting. This isn't a script. This is as real as the air you're breathing right now, as real as the ground beneath your feet. For years, I've had the profound honor and terrifying responsibility of portraying the Son of God, of speaking his words, of trying to capture even a fraction of his love, his authority, his compassion. But what happened to me in that desert oasis wasn't me drawing on my experience as an actor. It was Jesus drawing me into an experience that has left me undone, shaken, and absolutely convinced that most of the body of Christ is standing in the wrong place as we approach February. Let me take you back to that moment, to 2:47 a.m. on January 27th. I'd been asleep for maybe 3 hours when the dream came. In it, I saw a massive migration of people, millions of them, all walking in the same direction, following signs that pointed toward what looked like safety, toward what looked like blessing, toward what looked like the obvious path. The crowd was enormous, shoulder to shoulder, and everyone seemed confident, seemed certain. Many were carrying Bibles. Many were singing worship songs. These weren't unbelievers. These were Christians, convinced they were going the right way. But then the perspective shifted, and I saw from above, and my blood ran cold. They were walking directly toward a cliff edge hidden just beyond the horizon. And off to the side, barely visible, was a narrow path leading in a completely different direction. Almost no one was on it. It looked harder. It looked lonely. It looked like the wrong way. I woke up gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs, sweat soaking through my shirt despite the cool January night. And immediately, I heard in my spirit, go to the desert oasis, now. I'm a 51-year-old man. I'm single. I don't have children waiting for me at home. No wife to explain my strange midnight departures to. In some ways, God has kept my life unencumbered for moments exactly like this. So I didn't argue. I didn't rationalize. I threw on clothes, got in my car, and drove through the empty darkness toward that place I'd only been once before, years ago, a hidden sanctuary where underground springs feed a collection of palm trees and create a small reflecting pool in the middle of absolute desert wilderness. The drive took 40 minutes. The last 10 miles were on a dirt road that my GPS couldn't even map. I parked where the road ended and walked the final quarter mile by the light of my phone, my feet crunching on sand and scattered rock, the temperature hovering around 52 degrees, cold enough that I could see my breath, cold enough that I was grateful for the jacket I'd grabbed. When I emerged into the clearing where the oasis sat, I stopped breathing. The palm trees, there must have been 30 or 40 of them, were silhouetted against a sky so dense with stars it looked like someone had shattered diamonds across black velvet. The Milky Way stretched overhead in a luminous river of light. There was no moon, which made the stars even more brilliant, and their reflection in the perfectly still pool created the illusion of standing between two universes, two heavens, one above and one below. The air smelled of water and earth and something else, something I can only describe as ancient. Like this place had been holy long before I arrived. The palm fronds whispered and rustled in a breeze I could barely feel, creating a sound like distant conversation, like the trees themselves were praying. I walked to the edge of the reflecting pool and knelt down, my knees sinking slightly into the damp sand at the water's edge. The surface was so still, so perfect, that I could see every star reflected with absolute clarity, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know why I was there, so I did the only thing I could think of. I prayed. Jesus, I whispered into the darkness. I'm here. I don't know why, but I'm here. Speak to me. Show me. I'm listening. The words had barely left my lips when the temperature dropped. Dropped. It must have fallen 20 degrees in seconds. My breath came out in thick clouds, and the surface of the reflecting pool, which had been perfectly still, suddenly rippled outward from the center, as if someone had dropped a stone into it, except there was no stone. And then he was there. I can't explain it any other way. Jesus was standing on the opposite side of the pool, maybe 20 feet from me, and he was more real, more solid, more present than anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't a vision in the sense of something ghostly or transparent. This was him, physically, actually. There, he was wearing simple robes that seemed to absorb and reflect the starlight simultaneously. His face, oh, his face, was exactly as I'd imagined it thousands of times while preparing for the chosen, but also completely different, more rugged, more Middle Eastern, more human and more divine all at once. His eyes caught the starlight and held it, and when those eyes met mine, I felt like every secret I'd ever kept, every sin I'd ever committed, every doubt I'd ever harbored was laid bare in an instant. I fell forward, my face hitting the sand, my body trembling uncontrollably. Jonathan, he said, and his voice was like water and thunder and music all woven together. Stand up, look at me. I forced myself to my knees, then to my feet, though my legs felt like water. I couldn't look directly at him. It was too much, too intense. Look at me, he said again, and this time it was a command I couldn't resist. I raised my eyes to his face, and the love I saw there, the fierce, uncompromising, absolute love, brought tears streaming down my face. Do you know why you're here? He asked. I shook my head, unable to speak. He gestured to the pool between us. Look. I looked down, and the water was no longer reflecting stars. Instead, I saw images moving across its surface like a screen. I saw churches, thousands of them, packed with people. I saw conferences and worship services and prayer meetings. I saw Christians gathering in all the usual places, doing all the usual things, and they all looked so confident, so certain, so comfortable. They think they know where to be, Jesus said, and there was such sorrow in his voice that it made my chest ache. They think that because they're in church, because they're in community, because they're doing what they've always done, they're positioned correctly for what's coming. The image in the pool shifted, and I saw a calendar, February 2026. The days were marked with events, normal events, everyday events, planned events. But they're not listening, Jesus continued. They're not asking me where I need them to be. They're assuming. They're following the crowd. They're standing where it's comfortable, where it's familiar, where it makes sense to their natural minds. He walked around the pool toward me, his feet making no sound on the sand, and suddenly he was right in front of me, close enough that I could have reached out and touched him. The air around him seemed to shimmer with heat despite the cold. Jonathan, in the next 5 days before February begins, I am repositioning my people. Not all of them. Many will refuse. Many will think they know better. Many will be too afraid to move from where they're comfortable. But those who have ears to hear, those who are willing to look foolish, those who are willing to stand alone if necessary, they will hear my voice telling them exactly where to be. Where? I managed to choke out. Where do we need to be? He smiled, but it was a sad smile. That's what I'm going to show you over these next 3 nights, because it's not the same for everyone. It's not a formula. It's not a location. It's about learning to hear my voice clearly enough that when I say move, you move. When I say stay, you stay. When I say go there, you go, even if it makes no sense, even if everyone thinks you're crazy. He turned and looked out at the desert surrounding the oasis, at the vast emptiness stretching in every direction, barely visible in the starlight. This oasis, he said, exists because water flows where no one expects it, underground, hidden. Against all logic, there is life here in the middle of death, abundance in the middle of lack. Do you know why? I shook my head. Because the water doesn't follow the crowd. It doesn't flow where it's expected to flow. It finds the cracks, the hidden places, the paths that no one else sees. And wherever it goes, life follows. He turned back to me, and his eyes were blazing now, intense with urgency. February is a crack in time, Jonathan, a moment when the underground streams of my spirit are going to flow in unexpected directions, and those who are positioned at the source, those who are standing where I tell them to stand, they're going to experience an outpouring that will sustain them through everything that follows. But those who are standing in the obvious places, the comfortable places, the places where everyone else is standing, they're going to miss it entirely. The wind suddenly picked up, and the palm trees began to sway violently, their fronds cracking like whips. The surface of the pool churned and rippled, and in the water I saw something that made my blood run cold. I saw people, Christians, believers, people I recognized from my own life, standing in churches, in homes, in all the places they thought they should be, and they were crying out to God, asking why they felt so dry, so empty, so disconnected, and just a few feet away from them, invisible to their eyes, were streams of living water flowing past them, flowing to the ones who had repositioned themselves, the ones who had listened, the ones who had been willing to look foolish. No, I whispered. No, that can't be right. God wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Jesus interrupted, and his voice was sharp now. Wouldn't require obedience? Wouldn't require listening? Wouldn't require trust? Jonathan, I have always required my people to move when I say move. Noah had to build an ark when there was no rain. Abraham had to leave his home with no destination. Moses had to go back to Egypt when he'd finally found peace. David had to hide in caves when he'd been anointed king. Nothing has changed. I still require the same trust, the same obedience, the same willingness to look foolish in the eyes of the world. He knelt down beside the pool and put his hand in the water. Immediately, the images stopped, and the surface became mirror smooth again, reflecting his face and mine side by side. Look, he said softly. Look at us together. You've spent years trying to portray me, trying to understand me, trying to show others who I am. But Jonathan, do you really know me? Do you really trust me enough to do what I'm about to ask you to do? Tears were streaming down my face now, hot against my cold cheeks. I want to, I said. God, I want to. Then listen carefully over these next 3 nights, because I'm not just speaking to you. I'm speaking through you to everyone who's watching this, everyone who's been marked to receive this message. And what I'm about to reveal will separate the ones who truly want to follow me from the ones who just want to be comfortable. He stood up, and as he did, the first hint of dawn began to touch the eastern horizon, turning the black sky to deep purple. Tomorrow night, he said, come back here. Same time, and I'll show you the second thing you need to understand about positioning. Tonight, you've seen that most are standing in the wrong place. Tomorrow I'll show you what happens to those who refuse to move. And then, as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. Not fading away, not walking away, just gone. And I was alone in the oasis with the palm trees and the reflecting pool and the approaching dawn. I stood there shaking, crying, trying to process what had just happened. The temperature had returned to normal. The wind had died down. Everything looked exactly as it had when I'd first arrived, except that I was completely different. I stayed until the sun rose, watching the light transform the oasis from a place of shadow and starlight into a place of golden warmth and impossible beauty. And as I finally walked back to my car, my mind was racing with questions, with fears, with a desperate need to understand more. But one thing was absolutely clear. Jesus had just told me that in the next 5 days, before February 2026 begins, he's repositioning his people. And those who don't listen, those who stay where it's comfortable, are going to miss the outpouring that's coming. I don't know where you are right now as you watch this. I don't know what your life looks like, what your circumstances are, what your plans for February are. But I'm telling you, with everything in me, you need to start asking Jesus right now, today, this moment. Where do you need me to be? Where are you positioning me? What do you need me to do? Because tomorrow night, I'm going back to that oasis, And I'm going to share with you what Jesus shows me next, and I promise you it's going to challenge everything you think you know about obedience, about faith, about what it means to truly follow Him. Don't miss it. Set a reminder. Come back. Because you've been marked for this message, and what happens in the next few days could determine whether you're standing in the flow of God's Spirit in February or standing in a dry place wondering why everyone else seems to be experiencing something you're not. I'll see you tomorrow night. It was 2:33 a.m. on January 28th when I pulled up to the same spot where the dirt road ended, 14 minutes earlier than the previous night, because I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about what Jesus had said, couldn't shake the image of those Christians standing just feet away from flowing streams of living water, but unable to see them, unable to access them because they were positioned in the wrong place. The temperature had dropped even further tonight. My car's dashboard read 44 degrees, and as I stepped out into the darkness, a wind hit me that hadn't been there the night before, steady and cold, coming from the west, carrying with it the scent of sage and something else, something that smelled like rain even though there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I want to stop right here and talk to those of you who are watching this and thinking, this is too dramatic, this is too convenient. Jonathan is just making this up for views, for attention, for relevance. And I understand that skepticism, I really do. Because if someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be standing in a desert oasis at 2:30 in the morning having face-to-face encounters with Jesus, I would have been skeptical too. But here's what I need you to understand. I don't need the views. I don't need the attention. The Chosen has given me more platform than I ever wanted or asked for. What I need, what we all desperately need, is to hear from God clearly in this moment, in this season, because something is shifting, something is changing, and those who aren't paying attention are going to be left confused and dry when February begins. So before I continue with what happened on the second night, I need you to do something. I need you to drop a comment right now, just one word. Listening. That's it. Just type listening in the comments. Because that simple act, that declaration, positions your heart to receive what I'm about to share. It's an agreement with heaven that you're not just here to consume content, you're here to encounter God. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you're still on the fence about whether this channel is for you, let me be clear, this isn't for everyone. This is for the remnant. This is for the ones who are hungry enough to look past the unconventional delivery and hear the voice of God speaking through a broken, imperfect vessel. So subscribe now, because what I'm sharing over these 4 nights is going to build, and you don't want to miss a single piece. Now, let me take you back to that second night. I made the quarter-mile walk from my car to the oasis faster than I had the previous night, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, my breath coming out in visible clouds, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Because Jesus had said He was going to show me what happens to those who refuse to move, who refuse to reposition themselves, and something in His tone had told me this wasn't going to be comfortable to witness. When I emerged into the clearing, the scene was different than it had been 24 hours earlier. The wind was stronger here, making the palm trees bend and sway, their fronds creating a rushing sound like water, like a river flowing overhead. The reflecting pool was no longer mirror smooth. Its surface was rippled and disturbed, catching the starlight in fragmented pieces, creating a mosaic of light and shadow that seemed to pulse and move with its own rhythm. And the stars. Oh God, the stars were even more brilliant than they'd been the night before, if that was possible. But tonight, they seemed closer somehow, more present, as if the veil between heaven and earth had grown thinner, as if the distance between the divine and the physical had collapsed in this sacred space. I walked to the same spot where I'd knelt the previous night, the damp sand at the pool's edge, and I didn't even have to pray or call out. The moment my knees touched the ground, He was there. Jesus was standing in the exact same spot as before, on the opposite side of the pool, but tonight His expression was different. Last night, there had been sorrow in His eyes. Tonight there was something harder, something that looked like righteous anger mixed with grief, the expression of a father watching his children make choices that will destroy them despite his warnings. "You came back," He said, and there was approval in His voice. "I had to," I said, my voice barely audible over the wind. "I can't stop thinking about what you showed me, about the people standing in the wrong places. Jesus, I need to understand more. I need to know how to help them, how to warn them." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the pool between us. "Tonight, I'm going to show you what you asked to see. But Jonathan, I need you to understand something first. What I'm about to reveal is not meant to condemn, it's not meant to shame, it's meant to wake people up before it's too late. Do you understand the difference? I think so, I said. No, he said firmly. You need to know so, because when you share this, some people are going to accuse you of being judgmental, of being harsh, of trying to scare people, and you need to be anchored in the truth that warning someone about danger is the most loving thing you can do. If you saw someone walking toward a cliff in the dark, would you stay silent to avoid offending them? Or would you shout, even if it startled them, even if they got angry at you for disrupting their peaceful walk? I'd shout, I said. Then shout, he said, because that's what I'm asking you to do. Shout this warning to everyone who will listen. He moved around the pool toward me, and as he did, the wind intensified, whipping his robes around him, sending ripples racing across the water's surface. When he reached my side, he knelt down next to me, so close that I could feel warmth radiating from him despite the cold air. Look into the water, he said, and see what I see. I looked down, and the rippling surface suddenly cleared, becoming like glass, and in it, I saw a vision that made my stomach turn. I saw a church, a large, beautiful church with stained glass windows and comfortable pews and a state-of-the-art sound system. The sanctuary was packed with people, hundreds of them, all dressed nicely, all singing worship songs, all raising their hands in what looked like genuine devotion. The pastor was on stage, preaching a message about God's faithfulness, about his promises, about staying the course, and it all looked so right, so normal, so good. What's wrong with this? I asked Jesus. They're worshiping. They're hearing the word preached. Isn't this what we're supposed to do? Watch, he said quietly. The image zoomed out, and I saw that the church building was surrounded by a thick fog, a gray mist that pressed against the windows and doors. And in that fog, I could see shapes moving, dark, twisted shapes that circled the building like sharks circling prey. What are those? I whispered. Deception, Jesus said. Complacency, religious spirit, the enemies that attack when my people stop listening for my specific voice and start following their own routines, their own traditions, their own assumptions about what I want. The image shifted, and I saw the same church 3 weeks later, early February. The people were still there, still going through the motions, but something had changed. Their faces looked strained, confused. The worship felt forced. The preaching felt hollow. And one by one, I watched people start to leave, not physically leaving the building, but spiritually checking out, their eyes glazing over, their hearts closing, their spirits withering. But why? I asked, my voice breaking, and what happened? They were sincere, they were trying. Jesus put his hand on my shoulder, and the touch sent warmth flooding through my entire body. Jonathan, sincerity without obedience is just noise. Trying without listening is just activity. I told them, I've been telling them for months, that I was going to do something new in February. I told them to ask me where they needed to be, how they needed to position themselves, what I needed them to do differently, but they assumed that because they were already in church, already in community, already doing Christian things, they were automatically positioned correctly. The image in the water changed again, and now I saw individual people, close-ups of their faces. A woman in her 40s, sitting in her usual pew, wondering why worship felt so empty lately. A man in his 30s, serving in the children's ministry like he had for years, feeling burned out and disconnected. A young couple, attending every service, doing everything right, but feeling a growing distance from God that they couldn't explain. They're not bad people, Jesus said, and his voice was thick with emotion. They're not rebellious. They're not intentionally disobedient. They're just not listening. They're operating on autopilot, assuming that what worked last year will work this year, that what I asked of them last season is what I'm asking of them this season. He stood up, pulling me to my feet with him, and turned me away from the pool to face the desert that surrounded the oasis. The wind was howling now, sending sand skittering across the ground, making the palm trees groan and creak. Look out there, he said, pointing to the vast darkness beyond the ring of palm trees. What do you see? Nothing, I said. Just darkness, just empty desert. Exactly, he said. That's what it looks like to the natural eye. Empty, barren, dangerous. Why would anyone go out there when they could stay here, in the oasis, where there's water and shelter and life? I don't know, I said. But what if I told you that out there, in that darkness, in that apparent emptiness, I've prepared wells of living water that no one has discovered yet? What if I told you that the greatest outpouring of my spirit in this generation is going to happen in the places that look empty, that look dangerous, that look like the wrong place to be? He turned me back toward the pool, and the image had changed again. Now I saw people, not many, maybe a few dozen, scattered across what looked like wilderness areas. Some were alone, some were in pairs, some were in small groups of 3 or 4, and they all looked uncomfortable, uncertain, like they weren't sure they were in the right place. But as I watched, the ground beneath them began to crack open, and water started bubbling up, clear and pure and abundant. And the water didn't just stay where it was, it began to flow outward, creating streams that ran in every direction, and everywhere the water touched, life sprang up, plants, trees, flowers, and people began to appear, drawn to the water, desperate and thirsty, and they drank deeply and were transformed. These, Jesus said, are the ones who listened, the ones who asked me where to be and then obeyed, even when it didn't make sense, even when it looked wrong, even when everyone else thought they were crazy. And because they positioned themselves where I told them to be, they became sources of life for everyone around them. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face, my body shaking with the weight of what I was seeing. But Jesus, I said, how do we know? How do we know if we're hearing your voice correctly? What if we think you're telling us to move, but we're wrong? What if we leave where we're supposed to be and miss what you're doing? He smiled, and it was the saddest, most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. Jonathan, that's the question everyone asks. That's the fear that keeps my people trapped in comfortable places, doing comfortable things, following comfortable patterns. They're so afraid of missing me that they stay where they've always been, not realizing that I've already moved, that I'm already doing something new, that the cloud has lifted and they're still camped in the old place. He walked back to the pool and knelt down, putting both hands in the water. Immediately, the surface began to glow with a soft golden light that illuminated his face from below. Here's the truth that most of my people don't want to hear. You can't follow me and stay comfortable. You can't follow me and always be certain. You can't follow me and never risk being wrong. Following me requires trust. It requires stepping out. It requires being willing to look foolish. The light from the water grew brighter, and in it I saw more images, rapid fire like a montage. I saw Noah building an ark while his neighbors mocked him. I saw Abraham leaving everything familiar with no map, no plan, just a promise. I saw Moses going back to Egypt when he'd finally found peace. I saw David hiding in caves when he'd been anointed king. I saw the disciples leaving their businesses, their families, their security to follow a wandering rabbi. I saw Paul giving up his status, his reputation, his comfort to preach to the Gentiles. Every single one of them, Jesus said, had to move from where they were comfortable to where I needed them to be. Every single one of them looked foolish to the people around them. Every single one of them risked being wrong, but they listened and they obeyed and they positioned themselves where I could use them. He pulled his hands from the water and the light faded, leaving us in the dimness of starlight and wind. So here's what I need you to tell everyone who's watching this, he said, standing and facing me directly. In the next 3 days, before February begins, I am speaking to each of my children individually, specifically, personally, about where they need to be, not physically necessarily, though for some it will be physical, but spiritually, emotionally, relationally, financially. I am repositioning my people. He began to pace along the edge of the pool, and with each step the wind seemed to pulse, to breathe, to respond to his presence. Some I'm calling out of churches that have become comfortable and dead. Some I'm calling deeper into their churches to be voices of awakening. Some I'm calling out of relationships that are holding them back. Some I'm calling into relationships they've been avoiding. Some I'm calling to quit jobs that are draining their anointing. Some I'm calling to stay in jobs where they've wanted to quit because I have something for them there. Some I'm calling to give away money they've been hoarding. Some I'm calling to stop giving to places that aren't bearing fruit. He stopped and looked at me intently. It's not the same for everyone, Jonathan. That's what makes this so difficult. People want a formula. They want me to say, everyone needs to do X, so they can just follow the rule and feel secure. But I don't work that way. I never have. I'm not looking for rule followers. I'm looking for relationship. I'm looking for people who know my voice, who trust my heart, who will move when I say move, even if no one else is moving with them. The wind suddenly stopped. Completely. The palm trees went still. The water became glass smooth. And in the sudden silence, his voice was like thunder. And here's what happens to those who refuse to move. The water in the pool turned dark, almost black, and in it I saw the church from earlier, the one with all the sincere people doing all the right things. But now it was February, mid-February, and the building looked the same, the services looked the same, but the people were different. They were going through the motions, but there was no life in their eyes. They were singing, but there was no joy in their voices. They were praying, but their prayers bounced off the ceiling and fell back down, unheard. And outside the building I could see the streams of living water flowing past, just feet away, but no one inside could see them. They were so focused on their programs, their schedules, their traditions, that they couldn't see the move of God happening right outside their walls. "No," I whispered, "please, no. This is not what I want," Jesus said, and his voice was breaking now. "This is never what I want, but I will not force my presence on people who are content with the form of godliness but deny its power. I will not pour new wine into old wineskins. I will not give my glory to those who are more interested in their comfort than my presence." He knelt down beside me again, and when I looked into his eyes, I saw tears streaming down his face. "Jonathan, I'm weeping for my church. I'm weeping for my people who have become so comfortable, so settled, so sure they have me figured out that they've stopped listening for my voice. And when February comes, when I begin to move in ways they don't expect, in places they don't expect, through people they don't expect, they're going to miss it. And then they're going to wonder why they feel so dry, so empty, so disconnected." I was sobbing now, my whole body shaking. "What do we do? How do we help them? How do we—" "You warn them," he said simply. "You tell them what I've shown you. You tell them that they have 3 more days to get alone with me, to ask me where I need them to be, to listen for my specific instructions for their lives. You tell them that following the crowd, doing what everyone else is doing, staying where it's comfortable, these things will cause them to miss the greatest move of my spirit they've ever experienced." He stood up, and as he did, the first hint of dawn began to touch the eastern sky, turning it from black to deep purple to soft pink. "Tomorrow night," he said, "come back one more time, and I'll show you the final piece. Tonight you've seen what happens to those who refuse to move. Tomorrow I'll show you what's coming for those who do move, who do listen, who do obey. And Jonathan, it's going to give you hope, because this isn't just a message of warning, it's a message of incredible promise for those who have ears to hear." And then he was gone, and I was alone with the wind and the water and the approaching dawn. I stayed there for over an hour, just weeping, just processing, just trying to wrap my mind around what I'd seen. And as the sun rose and the oasis transformed from a place of shadow into a place of golden light, I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders like a physical thing. Because I know that some of you watching this are in those churches, in those comfortable places, going through those motions. And you feel it, don't you? You feel the dryness. You feel the disconnect. You feel like something is missing, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. And I'm here to tell you, it's not that God has left you. It's that he's moved and you haven't moved with him. He's doing something new, and you're still trying to experience him in the old ways. So here's what I need you to do right now, today, before you do anything else. I need you to get alone with Jesus, really alone, not just a quick prayer before bed, but intentionally alone. And I need you to ask him this question: where do you need me to be when February begins? What do you need me to do differently? How do you need me to reposition myself? And then, this is the hard part, you need to be quiet and listen, not for an audible voice necessarily, though it might be, but for that still, small voice in your spirit, for that gentle nudge, for that persistent thought that won't go away, for that uncomfortable conviction that you've been trying to ignore. And when you hear it, when you sense it, when you know it, you have to obey, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it looks wrong, even if everyone else thinks you're crazy. Because I'm telling you, with everything in me, based on what Jesus showed me in that desert oasis, the ones who listen and obey are going to experience an outpouring in February that will change their lives forever. And the ones who stay comfortable, who stay where they've always been, who keep doing what they've always done, they're going to miss it. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to the oasis one final time, and I'm going to share with you what Jesus shows me about the promise, about the hope, about what's waiting for those who position themselves correctly. Don't miss it. Set a reminder right now. Come back tomorrow night, because you've been marked for this message, and what I share tomorrow could be the difference between experiencing the fullness of what God has for you in February or spending the month wondering why you feel so empty. I'll see you tomorrow night. It was 2:19 a.m. on January 29th when I arrived at the oasis for the third night, 28 minutes earlier than the first night, 44 minutes earlier than the second, because I hadn't even tried to sleep. Couldn't pretend that rest was possible when my mind was racing with everything Jesus had shown me, when my heart was breaking for the thousands, maybe millions, of believers who were about to miss the greatest move of God in their generation simply because they were standing in the wrong place, listening to the wrong voices, following the comfortable path instead of the narrow one. The temperature had plummeted to 38 degrees, cold enough that my fingers were numb within minutes of stepping out of the car, cold enough that I could see ice crystals forming on the edges of the reflecting pool when my flashlight beam swept across it. But there was something else different about tonight, something I noticed immediately as I made that quarter-mile walk through the darkness. The sky was changing. When I'd arrived the first 2 nights, the stars had been brilliant, overwhelming, a river of light stretching from horizon to horizon, but tonight clouds were moving in from the west, thick and dark, blotting out the stars section by section, and the wind, God, the wind was fierce, gusting hard enough that I had to lean into it, hard enough that sand stung my face, hard enough that the palm trees were bending almost horizontal, their fronds whipping and cracking like gunshots. Before I go any further, I need to address something. Over the past 2 nights since I've been sharing these encounters, the comments have been divided. Some of you are hungry, desperate, crying out for more, saying that God is confirming these words in your spirit, that you're already hearing His voice telling you to move, to change, to reposition. And I'm so grateful for you. You're the remnant. You're the ones who have ears to hear. But others, and I knew this would happen, are angry, accusing, calling me a false prophet, saying I'm manipulating people, claiming that God doesn't work this way, that this is all too dramatic, too convenient, too theatrical. And to those people, I want to say this as lovingly as I can. I understand your skepticism. I really do. But your skepticism doesn't change what happened. Your disbelief doesn't make these encounters less real. And your comfort with a God who only speaks in ways you approve of, in ways you understand, in ways that fit your theology, that comfort might be the very thing that causes you to miss Him when He shows up in unexpected ways. So if you're still watching, still here despite your doubts, I'm asking you to do one thing. Drop a comment right now that says open, just that one word, because that's what you need to be. Open. Open to the possibility that God is bigger than your boxes, wilder than your theology, more unpredictable than your comfortable Christianity has allowed Him to be. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you're still holding back, still on the fence, let me be clear. After tonight, after I share what Jesus showed me on this third night, you're either going to be all in or you're going to walk away. There's no middle ground anymore. So subscribe now, because what I'm about to share is going to require everything you have to receive it. Now let me take you back to that third night, to the wind and the cold and the approaching storm. When I emerged into the clearing where the oasis sat, I stopped dead in my tracks. The scene was almost apocalyptic. The palm trees were thrashing violently, some of them bent so far that their fronds were touching the ground. The reflecting pool was no longer reflecting anything. Its surface was churned into whitecaps, water sloshing over the edges, turning the sand at the perimeter into mud. And the sky was a roiling mass of dark clouds moving fast, lit from within by lightning that hadn't reached the ground yet but was building, building, building toward something explosive. And standing in the middle of it all, completely still while everything around him moved, was Jesus. He wasn't on the opposite side of the pool this time. He was standing in the center of the oasis, right where the underground spring fed the pool, and he was looking up at the sky with his arms outstretched, and the wind that was tearing at everything else didn't touch him. His robes hung perfectly still. His hair didn't move. It was as if he existed in a different reality, a pocket of perfect calm in the middle of chaos. I ran toward him, stumbling through the wind, my eyes watering from the cold and the sand, and when I got within 10 feet of him, I fell to my knees, not because I intended to, but because my legs simply gave out under the weight of his presence. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice cut through the wind like a knife through silk, clear and sharp and impossible to miss. "Are you ready to see what I have prepared for those who listen?" "Yes," I gasped, my teeth chattering. "Yes, Lord, show me." He lowered his arms and turned to face me, and the expression on his face was unlike anything I'd seen the previous 2 nights. This wasn't sorrow, this wasn't grief, this wasn't even the righteous anger I'd witnessed. This was joy, pure, fierce, overwhelming joy mixed with anticipation, like a father about to give his children a gift so extravagant, so beyond their comprehension, that he can barely contain his excitement. "Stand up," he said, and there was laughter in his voice. Stand up and see what February holds for my faithful ones. I forced myself to my feet, my body shaking from cold and awe and something else, something that felt like electricity running through my veins. Jesus walked to the edge of the pool, and despite the wind churning its surface, the moment he looked into it, the water became perfectly still, perfectly clear, like glass. And in that glass, I saw a vision that made my breath catch in my throat. I saw a woman, maybe in her mid-30s, ordinary looking, no one you'd pick out of a crowd, standing alone in what looked like a warehouse or an empty storefront. It was early February, maybe the first or second week, and she looked uncertain, almost scared, like she wasn't sure she was supposed to be there. She was praying, whispering under her breath, and I could hear her words even though they were barely audible. Jesus, if this is really you, if this is really where you want me, please confirm it. Please show me I didn't make a mistake. And as she prayed, the door to the warehouse opened, and one person walked in, then another, then another. Within minutes, there were dozens of people, all of them looking lost, broken, desperate, and the woman began to speak, and as she spoke, the presence of God filled that place so tangibly that people began to fall to their knees, weeping, crying out, encountering Jesus in ways they never had before. She almost didn't come, Jesus said softly, standing beside me now, both of us looking into the water. She was comfortable in her church. She had friends there, community there, a role there. But I told her to leave. I told her to rent this warehouse. I told her to just show up and wait. And she obeyed, even though it terrified her, even though everyone thought she was making a mistake, and because she positioned herself where I told her to be, she became a gateway for my presence to reach people who would never step foot in a traditional church. The image shifted and I saw a man, older, maybe in his 60s, sitting in a coffee shop with his laptop open. It was mid-February, and he was writing, his fingers flying across the keyboard, and I could see tears streaming down his face as he typed. And as I watched, the words he was writing began to glow, literally glow with golden light, and that light spread through the screen and out into the digital realm, and everywhere it touched, people were set free from lies, from bondage, from deception. He's a retired accountant, Jesus said, spent 40 years crunching numbers, living a safe life, never thinking he had anything significant to offer my kingdom. But I told him to start writing. I told him to share the revelations I've been giving him for years, the ones he kept private because he thought no one would care. And he obeyed, and his words are going to reach millions, are going to spark a revival in the digital space that will spread faster than anything the church has seen before. The images came faster now, one after another, a cascade of visions that left me breathless. I saw a young couple selling their house and moving into a tiny apartment so they could use the equity to fund underground churches in restricted nations. I saw a teenager starting a prayer meeting in her school that grew to hundreds of students gathering before classes to seek God's face. I saw a businessman walking away from a promotion because God told him to stay in his current position where he could mentor a young employee who was on the verge of suicide. I saw a single mother quitting her job, actually quitting because God told her to homeschool her children and that he would provide. And I watched as provision came from the most unexpected sources, as her obedience positioned her family for a generational blessing. I saw a pastor leaving his megachurch to plant a house church with 12 people. I saw a worship leader giving up her platform to serve in a nursing home, leading elderly saints into encounters with God in their final days. I saw a college student dropping out, actually dropping out, because God called him to full-time prayer and fasting, and I watched as his prayers shifted atmospheres over entire cities. "These are my faithful ones," Jesus said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "These are the ones who heard my voice and obeyed, even when it cost them everything, even when it looked foolish, even when everyone around them said they were making a mistake." And Jonathan, watch what happens to them in February. The water in the pool began to glow, that same golden light I'd seen in the accountant's words, and the light grew brighter and brighter until I had to shield my eyes. And in that light I saw the same people again, but now they were surrounded by streams of living water, by rivers of God's presence, and everywhere they went, life sprang up. Healing, deliverance, salvation, miracles. Not the staged, hyped-up, manufactured miracles of religious performance, but real, raw, undeniable encounters with the living God. This is what I'm releasing in February, Jesus said, and now he was shouting over the wind, his voice rising with the intensity of the storm building overhead. This is the outpouring I've been preparing, but it's not going to the places people expect. It's not going to the big platforms, the famous ministries, the comfortable churches. It's going to the ones who position themselves where I told them to be, who were willing to look foolish, who were willing to lose everything to gain me. Lightning suddenly struck, close enough that I felt the electricity in the air, close enough that the thunder was instantaneous and deafening, and in the flash of light I saw something that made my heart nearly stop. I saw the church from the previous night, the one with all the sincere people doing all the right things but refusing to move, refusing to listen. And I saw the streams of living water flowing past it, just feet from its walls. But now I saw something else. I saw some people, not many, maybe 10 or 15 out of hundreds, suddenly stop what they were doing, stop singing, stop going through the motions. And I saw them turn their heads, as if hearing something no one else could hear. And then I watched as they got up from their seats and walked out of the building, walked right out into the rain and the darkness, following the sound of God's voice even though they couldn't see where they were going. And the moment they stepped outside, the moment they left the comfort and the light and the familiar, they saw the streams, they saw the water flowing, and they ran to it, fell into it, were swept up in it, and were carried to the places God had prepared for them. Even now, Jesus said, even in this final hour, I'm calling people out. I'm calling them out of comfort and into adventure. I'm calling them out of the familiar and into the unknown. I'm calling them out of the crowd and into the wilderness. And those who respond, those who obey, those who are willing to look crazy, they're going to experience me in ways they never dreamed possible. He turned away from the pool and walked toward the edge of the oasis, toward the desert darkness beyond the palm trees, and he gestured for me to follow. I did, my feet sinking into the sand, the wind tearing at my clothes, the cold biting into my skin. When we reached the perimeter, he stopped and pointed out into the darkness. "What do you see?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just darkness, just empty desert." "Look closer," he said. I squinted into the darkness, and slowly, gradually, I began to see lights. Tiny lights, scattered across the desert like stars fallen to earth. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, each one small, each one seemingly insignificant, but together creating a constellation of hope in the darkness. "Those are my people," Jesus said quietly. "The ones who listened, the ones who moved, the ones who positioned themselves in the places that looked empty, that looked wrong, that looked like the last place God would show up. And in February, I'm going to light them up. I'm going to make them burn so brightly that the darkness cannot overcome them. And people who are lost, people who are desperate, people who have given up on the church but not on me, they're going to be drawn to those lights like moths to flame." He turned to face me, and in the lightning flashes, I could see tears streaming down his face. "But Jonathan, here's what breaks my heart. For every light you see out there, there are 10 people, 20 people, 100 people still sitting in comfortable places, still going through religious motions, still convinced they're doing everything right, and they're going to miss this. They're going to miss the greatest move of my spirit in their generation because they were too comfortable to move, too afraid to look foolish, too attached to their reputation to risk it for me." Another lightning strike, closer this time, and in its flash I saw his face clearly, and the expression there was one of absolute determination mixed with desperate love. "So here's what I need you to tell them," he said, and his voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow I could hear every word despite the wind. "Tell them they have 2 days left, 2 days before February begins, 2 days to get alone with me and ask where I need them to be. Tell them that I'm not asking everyone to do something dramatic. For some, the repositioning is internal, a shift in perspective, a change in priorities, a letting go of control. But for others, I'm asking for radical obedience, leaving jobs, leaving churches, leaving relationships, leaving comfort zones. And they need to be willing to do whatever I ask, go wherever I send, give up whatever I require." He grabbed my shoulders, and the touch sent warmth flooding through my frozen body. "Tell them that the cost of obedience is high, but the cost of disobedience is higher. Tell them that following me has always required everything, has always looked foolish to the world, has always meant being willing to lose your life to find it. Tell them that I'm not interested in their comfort. I'm interested in their transformation. I'm not interested in their religious performance. I'm interested in their wholehearted devotion." The wind suddenly stopped. Completely. The palm trees went still. The clouds overhead froze in place, and in the sudden, absolute silence, his next words fell like stones into still water. And tell them this: February is a dividing line. It's a separation point. It's the moment when those who truly want me will be distinguished from those who just want the benefits of knowing me. It's when the sheep will be separated from the goats, when the wise virgins will be separated from the foolish ones, when those who built on rock will be separated from those who built on sand. He released my shoulders and stepped back, and as he did, the wind resumed, the storm continued building, and the first drops of rain began to fall, cold and hard. I'm not saying that those who miss this are lost, he continued, raising his voice over the returning wind. I'm not saying they're not saved, but I am saying they're going to spend the next season, maybe the next year, maybe longer, in a spiritual wilderness, wondering why they feel so dry, so empty, so disconnected, while all around them they hear reports of God moving in powerful ways. And it will be because they chose comfort over obedience, chose the familiar over the adventure, chose the crowd over the narrow path. He walked back toward the center of the oasis, and I followed, rain now falling steadily, soaking through my jacket, plastering my hair to my head. When we reached the pool, he knelt down and put both hands in the water, and despite the rain falling on its surface, it became clear again, and in it I saw one final vision. I saw a massive harvest field, ripe and ready, stretching as far as the eye could see, and I saw workers scattered throughout it, not many, not nearly enough, but each one working with supernatural speed and efficiency, gathering in sheaves, bringing in the harvest, and I saw that each worker was glowing with that same golden light, and the light attracted people from every direction, people who were hungry, desperate, ready to encounter God. This is February, Jesus said. This is what I'm releasing. The harvest is ripe, the fields are ready, but the workers are few, and they're going to be the ones who position themselves where I told them to be, who were willing to leave the comfortable places to go into the fields. He stood up, and as he did, the rain intensified, becoming a downpour, and lightning struck again and again, illuminating the oasis in strobing flashes of brilliant white light. Tomorrow, he said, and I had to strain to hear him over the thunder, you're going to share the practical application. You're going to tell them exactly what to do, how to position themselves, how to hear my voice clearly. But tonight, I needed you to see the promise. I needed you to see what's waiting for those who obey, because the warning means nothing without the hope. The judgment means nothing without the mercy. The cost means nothing without the reward. He began to fade, becoming translucent, the rain falling through him now instead of on him. Jonathan, he said, his voice growing distant, you've been faithful to share what I've shown you. Tomorrow night, finish strong. Give them the tools they need. Give them the steps they need to take. Give them hope mixed with urgency, and trust that everyone who's meant to hear this message will hear it, and everyone who's meant to respond will respond. And then he was gone, and I was alone in the downpour, standing in the middle of the oasis, completely soaked, completely exhausted, completely overwhelmed by what I'd witnessed. I don't know how long I stood there, long enough that the storm passed, that the rain stopped, that the clouds began to break apart and the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon, long enough that my body stopped shivering and went numb, long enough that everything I'd seen, everything I'd heard, everything Jesus had shown me over these 3 nights crystallized into absolute certainty. This is real. This is happening. February is a dividing line, and those who position themselves where God tells them to be are going to experience an outpouring that will change their lives forever. As I walked back to my car in the early morning light, my clothes still dripping, my body exhausted, but my spirit more alive than it had ever been, I knew that tonight, the 4th and final night, I had to give you practical steps. I had to give you a roadmap. I had to give you exactly what to do in these final 2 days before February begins. Because here's what I know about you, about the ones who are still watching, still listening, still hungry. You don't just want to hear about what God is doing. You want to participate in it. You don't just want to be inspired. You want to be transformed. You don't just want to know the promise. You want to walk in it. So tonight actually, since you're watching these back to back, I'm going to give you the 30-minute daily challenge that Jesus gave me. I'm going to give you the specific steps to position yourself for the February outpouring. I'm going to give you the tools to hear God's voice clearly and the courage to obey what He tells you, even when it costs you everything. But right now, before you do anything else, I need you to do something. I need you to get alone, really alone, not just in your room with your phone nearby, but actually alone, And I need you to ask Jesus this question: what are you asking me to give up? What are you asking me to let go of? What are you asking me to walk away from so I can walk toward you? And then be quiet and listen, because he's been trying to tell you for weeks, maybe months. He's been whispering it in your spirit, nudging you in your conscience, confirming it through circumstances. But you've been too busy, too distracted, too afraid to really hear it, so hear it now. Listen now. Respond now. Because you have 2 days left, 2 days before February begins. 2 days to position yourself for the greatest move of God you've ever experienced. Don't waste them. It's now January 30th, and I'm not at the Oasis anymore. I'm sitting here in my home, the morning light streaming through my window, a cup of coffee growing cold on the table beside me, and I'm looking at the journal where I've been frantically writing everything Jesus showed me over those 3 nights. My hands are still shaking, not from cold this time, but from the weight of what I'm about to share with you, because this final part isn't just information, it's activation. It's not just inspiration, it's instruction. And what you do with it in the next 48 hours, literally the next 48 hours before February 2026 begins, will determine whether you experience the outpouring or watch it from the sidelines. Before I give you the practical steps, I need to tell you what happened after I left the Oasis that third night, after the storm, after Jesus faded into the rain and left me standing there soaked and shaking and completely undone. I drove home in silence, didn't turn on the radio, didn't make any phone calls, just drove through the pre-dawn darkness with my mind racing, trying to process everything I'd seen, everything I'd heard, everything that had been downloaded into my spirit over those 3 supernatural encounters. And as I drove, I felt the Holy Spirit whisper something that stopped me cold. Go back. I actually argued with him, out loud, in my car, like a crazy person. Lord, I just left. I'm exhausted. I'm soaked. I need to process this. I need to go back. In the daylight, you need to see something. So I turned around, drove back down that dirt road as the sun was rising, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber and rose. And when I made that quarter-mile walk to the Oasis, when I emerged into the clearing in full daylight for the first time, I understood why he'd sent me back. The Oasis was smaller than I'd thought, much smaller. In the darkness, with just starlight and my flashlight, it had seemed vast, expansive, almost infinite. But in the daylight, I could see that the ring of palm trees was maybe 50 feet in diameter. The reflecting pool was perhaps 20 feet across. The whole thing could fit inside a typical church sanctuary. And that's when it hit me. God doesn't need a massive stage to do something massive. He doesn't need a huge platform to release a huge outpouring. He doesn't need impressive surroundings to do impressive things. He just needs people who will show up, who will listen, who will position themselves where he tells them to be. No matter how small it looks, no matter how insignificant it seems, no matter how foolish it appears to everyone else. That oasis exists because water flows underground, hidden, following paths that no one can see, and it breaks through to the surface in the most unexpected place, in the middle of a desert where nothing should be able to survive. And that's exactly what God is doing in February. He's releasing underground streams of his spirit, and they're going to break through to the surface in the most unexpected places, through the most unexpected people, in the most unexpected ways. And if you're positioned at the source, if you're standing where he tells you to stand, you're going to become an oasis in the desert for everyone around you. Now, before I give you the practical steps, I need you to do something. I need you to drop a comment right now that says, I'm ready. Just those 2 words. Because what I'm about to share requires readiness. It requires willingness. It requires a heart that's already said yes before knowing what the question is. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you've watched all 4 parts of this series and you're still holding back, I need to be honest with you. You're not ready. Because subscription is the smallest, easiest act of commitment. And if you can't even do that, you're not going to be able to do what Jesus is asking of you in the next 48 hours. So subscribe now. Not for me, for you. Because it's a declaration that you're all in, that you're part of the remnant, that you're willing to go wherever God leads. All right, here's the 30-minute daily challenge that Jesus gave me. And I need you to understand something. This isn't a suggestion. This isn't a try this if you feel like it kind of thing. This is a mandate for the next 48 hours, and then it needs to become your lifestyle for the entire month of February and beyond. The 30-minute daily challenge, minutes 1 to 10, silence and surrender. Find a place where you can be completely alone, not just physically alone, but digitally alone. Turn off your phone. Actually turn it off. Don't just silence it. No music, no worship playlist, no ambient sounds, just silence. And in that silence, I want you to do something that's going to feel uncomfortable, maybe even terrifying. I want you to surrender your agenda. Most of us come to prayer with a list. We want God to do this, fix that, provide this, heal that. And there's nothing wrong with bringing our requests to Him. But for these first 10 minutes, you're not allowed to ask for anything. You're not allowed to present your agenda. You're only allowed to say one thing over and over until you mean it with every fiber of your being. Jesus, I surrender my plans for your plans. I surrender my comfort for your purpose. I surrender my reputation for your glory. I surrender my understanding for your wisdom. I surrender everything. Say it out loud. Say it until you feel something shift in your spirit. Say it until the words stop being just words and become a genuine transaction between you and God. Say it until you're actually willing to do whatever He asks, go wherever He sends, give up whatever He requires. And here's the key, you have to mean it. God isn't interested in religious performances. He's not impressed by eloquent prayers. He's looking for genuine surrender. He's looking for people who will say yes before they know what they're saying yes to. Minutes 11:20. Listening and receiving. After you've surrendered, after you've laid down your agenda, now you're ready to listen. And this is where most Christians fail. We're so uncomfortable with silence, so addicted to noise, so afraid of what we might hear or not hear, that we fill the space with our own words, our own thoughts, our own plans, dressed up in spiritual language. But for these 10 minutes, you're going to be quiet and listen, really listen. And I want you to ask Jesus 3 specific questions and then wait for the answer. Don't rush. Don't fill the silence. Don't assume you know what He's going to say. Just ask and wait. Question 1. Where do you need me to be when February begins? This might be a physical location. It might be a spiritual posture. It might be a relational position. It might be a financial stance. Don't assume you know. Ask and listen. Question 2. What do you need me to let go of? This is the hard one, because He's going to show you something, a relationship, a habit, a comfort, a security, a dream, a plan that you're holding on to that's preventing you from receiving what He wants to give you. And you're going to want to negotiate. You're going to want to offer Him something else instead. But don't. Just listen to what He says and write it down. Question 3. What are you asking me to do that I've been avoiding? You already know the answer to this one. You've known for weeks, maybe months. He's been whispering it, nudging you, confirming it through circumstances and other people in His word, but you've been ignoring it because it looks too hard, too scary, too foolish, too costly. So ask the question and let Him bring it to the surface. Let Him make it clear. Let Him remove all your excuses. Write down everything you hear, everything you sense, everything that comes to mind. Don't edit it. Don't rationalize it. Don't spiritualize it. Just write it down. Minutes 21 to 30, commitment and action. Now comes the most important part. You've surrendered, you've listened, you've received instruction. Now you have to commit to obedience and take the first step. For these final 10 minutes, I want you to do 2 things. First, make a verbal commitment to God. Say out loud, Jesus, I commit to obeying what you've shown me, even if it costs me everything, even if I look foolish, even if I lose people I love, even if it doesn't make sense. I commit to positioning myself where you've told me to be. I commit to letting go of what you've told me to release. I commit to doing what you've asked me to do, and I'm starting today. Second, take one immediate action step, not tomorrow, not next week, today, right now. If He told you to have a conversation, pick up the phone and schedule it. If He told you to give something away, start the process. If He told you to quit something, write the resignation letter. If He told you to start something, take the first step. It doesn't have to be the complete action, but it has to be a real, tangible, irreversible step in the direction of obedience. Because here's what I've learned over these 3 nights in the desert. God doesn't give the full roadmap to people who won't take the first step. He doesn't show you the entire journey to people who won't start walking. He reveals the path one step at a time to those who are actually moving. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Jonathan, I did this. I asked God where to be and I didn't hear anything. I sat in silence and it was just silence. Does that mean I'm not one of the chosen ones? Does that mean I'm going to miss the outpouring? No, it means you need to keep asking, keep listening, keep positioning yourself to hear, because sometimes God's silence is a test of your persistence. Sometimes He waits to speak until He knows you're desperate enough to actually obey what He says. Sometimes He's quiet because there's still noise in your life that needs to be eliminated before you can hear His voice clearly. So if you didn't hear anything the first time, do the 30-minute challenge again and again and again. Do it every day for the next 48 hours. Do it multiple times a day if you have to. because I'm telling you, based on everything Jesus showed me, he is speaking. He is giving specific instructions to his people about where to be and what to do when February begins. And if you're not hearing it, it's not because he's not speaking, it's because something is blocking your ability to hear. Let me tell you what happened to me yesterday, January 29th, after I came home from the Oasis. I did this exact 30-minute challenge, and when I asked Jesus what he was asking me to do that I'd been avoiding, he showed me something that made my stomach drop. He showed me that I've been holding back parts of my story, parts of my struggle, parts of my journey, because I was afraid of how it would affect my reputation, my career, my image. I've been playing it safe, sharing just enough to seem vulnerable, but not enough to actually risk anything. And he told me that in February, he needs me to share the whole truth. The failures, the doubts, the times I've completely missed him, the ways I've compromised, the moments I've chosen comfort over obedience. And I'm not going to lie to you, I don't want to do it. I'm 51 years old. I'm single. I don't have a family to fall back on if my career implodes. I don't have a backup plan if people reject me, if the industry blacklists me, if the Christian community decides I'm too honest, too raw, too real. But I'm going to do it anyway, because Jesus made it clear that my obedience in this area is going to give other people permission to be honest about their own struggles, and that honesty is going to create an atmosphere where his presence can move in unprecedented ways. So I'm telling you this not to make myself look good, but to show you that I'm in the same boat you are. I'm being asked to do something that terrifies me. I'm being asked to let go of something I've been clinging to. I'm being asked to position myself in a place that feels vulnerable and exposed and risky, and I'm choosing to obey, not because I'm brave, but because the cost of disobedience is higher than the cost of obedience. Now, let me give you some specific examples of what repositioning might look like, because I know some of you are still confused about what this actually means in practical terms. For some of you, repositioning means leaving a church where you've been comfortable but spiritually stagnant. I know that sounds harsh. I know it goes against everything we've been taught about commitment and faithfulness. But if God is telling you to leave, if you've been sensing for months that your season there is over, if you're staying out of obligation or fear or guilt rather than genuine calling, you need to go. You need to have the hard conversation with your pastor, thank them for their investment in your life, and move to where God is leading you, even if it's smaller, even if it's less impressive, even if it's just a living room with 5 people. For some of you, repositioning means staying in a church where you've wanted to leave because it's hard, because you're not being fed, because you're not getting what you need. But God is telling you that he's placed you there as a voice, as an intercessor, as a catalyst for change. And your obedience to stay when you want to go is going to position you to be part of a revival in that place. For some of you, repositioning means quitting a job that's been draining your anointing, even if it pays well, even if it's secure, even if everyone thinks you're crazy to walk away. God is calling you to a season of less income but more impact, less security but more significance, less comfort but more calling. For some of you, repositioning means ending a relationship, not necessarily a romantic relationship, though it might be, but a friendship, a business partnership, a ministry connection that has become toxic, that's pulling you away from God rather than toward him, and you've been holding on because you're afraid of being alone, afraid of hurting someone, afraid of what people will think. But God is saying that this relationship is preventing you from stepping into what he has for you. For some of you, repositioning means starting something you've been putting off for years, a ministry, a business, a creative project, a mission, because you've been waiting for the perfect time, the perfect resources, the perfect circumstances. But God is saying that February is the time that he'll provide the resources as you step out, that the circumstances will never be perfect, but his presence will be sufficient. For some of you, repositioning means moving, actually physically moving to a different city, a different state, maybe even a different country. And you've been ignoring that call because it's too disruptive, too expensive, too complicated. But God is positioning you geographically for what he's about to do, and your obedience to move is going to put you at the epicenter of revival. For some of you, repositioning is entirely internal. You're exactly where God wants you physically, but you need to shift your perspective, your priorities, your focus. You need to stop striving and start resting, stop performing and start receiving, stop trying to make things happen and start letting God move through you. The point is this: it's different for everyone. There's no formula, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. That's why you have to do the 30-minute challenge. That's why you have to get alone with Jesus and ask him specifically what he's asking of you. Because what he's asking of your neighbor, your friend, your pastor, your spouse, it might be completely different than what he's asking of you. Now here's the urgent part. Here's why the next 48 hours are so critical. Jesus showed me that February 1st, 2026 is a threshold. It's a doorway. It's a moment when heaven opens over those who have positioned themselves correctly, and an outpouring begins that will sustain them through everything that follows. But that doorway doesn't stay open indefinitely. He showed me that those who position themselves in the first week of February will experience the fullness of what he's releasing. Those who wait until the second week will still experience it, but not with the same intensity. Those who wait until the third week will catch the tail end of it, and those who wait until the fourth week or beyond, they'll miss the initial outpouring entirely and will have to wait for the next wave, which might not come for months or even years. So you have a choice to make. You have 48 hours to get alone with God, to hear his voice, to receive your instructions, and to take the first steps of obedience. 48 hours to position yourself for the greatest move of God in your generation. 48 hours to decide whether you're going to be part of the remnant that experiences the outpouring or part of the crowd that watches from the sidelines wondering what happened. And I need to be clear about something. This isn't manipulation. This isn't me trying to create false urgency to get you to do something. This is me faithfully reporting what Jesus showed me in that desert oasis over 3 supernatural nights. You can dismiss it, you can ignore it, you can call me a false prophet or a manipulator or a charlatan. That's your choice. But you can't say you weren't warned. You can't say you didn't have the opportunity. You can't say no one told you. Because I'm telling you right now, February 2026 is a dividing line. It's a separation point. It's the moment when those who truly want Jesus will be distinguished from those who just want the benefits of knowing him. So here's what I need you to do in the next 48 hours. Today, January 30th, do the 30-minute challenge at least twice, once in the morning, once at night. Write down everything God shows you, everything he says, everything you sense. Take at least one immediate action step toward obedience. Tell someone what God is asking you to do, not for their approval, but for accountability. Tomorrow, January 31st. Do the 30-minute challenge at least 3 times. Morning, afternoon, night. Finalize your plan of obedience. What specifically are you going to do on February 1st? Eliminate any obstacles that might prevent you from obeying. Cancel conflicting commitments. Clear your schedule. Remove distractions. Go to bed early. Get rest. Because February 1st needs to start with you fully present, fully available, fully positioned. February 1st, wake up early, before dawn if possible. Do the 30-minute challenge first thing, before coffee, before checking your phone, before anything else. Then do whatever God told you to do. Go where he told you to go. Say what he told you to say. Give what he told you to give. Start what he told you to start. End what he told you to end. And then watch. Watch what God does. Watch how he moves. Watch how he provides. Watch how he confirms. Watch how he pours out his spirit in ways you never imagined. And then, after February 1st, continue the 30-minute challenge every single day for the entire month. Because this isn't a one-time thing. This is a lifestyle. This is learning to live in constant communication with God, in constant obedience to his voice, in constant positioning for his presence. Now, I want to speak specifically to those of you who are scared, those of you who have heard God's voice clearly, who know exactly what he's asking you to do, but you're terrified. Terrified of what it will cost, terrified of what people will think, terrified of failing, terrified of looking foolish. I get it. I'm scared too. I'm scared of sharing this message because I know some people are going to mock it, dismiss it, attack me for it. I'm scared of the obedience God is requiring of me because it's going to cost me things I value. I'm scared that I'm going to get this wrong, that I'm going to miss something, that I'm going to lead people astray. But here's what I know. Fear is not a reason to disobey. Fear is not an excuse to stay comfortable. Fear is not permission to ignore God's voice. In fact, fear is often a sign that you're on the right track, because the enemy doesn't waste his time attacking people who aren't a threat. He doesn't bother trying to scare people who are content to stay in their comfort zones. He reserves his most intense attacks for the ones who are about to step into their calling, about to position themselves for breakthrough, about to become conduits of God's presence. So if you're scared, good. That means you're taking this seriously. That means you understand the weight of what God is asking. That means you're not treating this like some casual, optional suggestion, but don't let the fear stop you. Feel the fear and obey anyway. Acknowledge the fear and move forward anyway. Let the fear drive you to your knees in prayer, but don't let it keep you from taking the step God is asking you to take. Because I promise you, based on everything Jesus showed me, the reward of obedience is infinitely greater than the cost. The joy of experiencing God's presence is infinitely greater than the comfort of staying where you are. The adventure of following Jesus into the unknown is infinitely greater than the safety of staying in the familiar. Let me tell you what I saw in that final vision Jesus showed me in the oasis. I saw people, ordinary people, people just like you and me, who had obeyed, who had repositioned themselves, who had taken the risk, and I saw their faces, and the expression on their faces was one of absolute wonder, absolute joy, absolute fulfillment. They looked like people who had finally found what they'd been searching for their entire lives. They looked like people who had finally stepped into their purpose, their calling, their destiny. And then I saw the faces of those who had stayed comfortable, who had refused to move, who had missed the outpouring, and their faces were filled with regret, not condemnation, not judgment, but deep, profound regret. The regret of knowing they had been invited to the adventure of a lifetime and had chosen safety instead. The regret of knowing they had heard God's voice and had ignored it. The regret of knowing they had been positioned for breakthrough and had settled for maintenance. And Jesus looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, I don't want anyone to live with that regret. I don't want anyone to look back on February 2026 and wish they had obeyed. That's why I'm sending you to warn them, to encourage them, to give them the tools they need to position themselves correctly. So I'm asking you, I'm begging you, don't be the person who looks back with regret. Don't be the person who had the opportunity and didn't take it. Don't be the person who heard God's voice and ignored it because it was too hard, too scary, too costly. Be the person who said yes. Be the person who took the risk. Be the person who positioned themselves where God told them to be, even when it didn't make sense, even when it looked foolish, even when everyone else thought they were crazy, because those are the people who are going to experience the February outpouring. Those are the people who are going to become oases in the desert. Those are the people who are going to carry the presence of God in such a tangible way that everyone around them will be drawn to Jesus. Now, before I close, I want to address one more thing. Some of you are watching this and thinking, but Jonathan, what if I miss it? What if I do the 30-minute challenge and I still don't hear clearly? What if I take a step and it's the wrong step? What if I obey what I think God is saying and I'm wrong? Here's what I want you to understand. God honors the heart of obedience even when we get the details wrong. He honors the willingness to move even when we move in the wrong direction initially. He honors the desire to hear his voice even when we misinterpret what he's saying. The only way you can truly miss this is by not trying at all. The only way you can fail is by refusing to take any step. The only way you can be disqualified is by choosing comfort over obedience. So take the step. Make the move. Do what you believe God is asking you to do, and if you get it wrong, he'll redirect you. If you misunderstand, he'll clarify. If you stumble, he'll catch you. But you have to move. You have to try. You have to position yourself to receive what he's releasing, and here's the beautiful thing. Even if you don't get it perfectly right, even if you miss some of the details, the very act of pursuing God with this level of intensity, of seeking his voice with this level of desperation, of positioning yourself with this level of intentionality, that alone will position you to experience more of his presence than you've ever experienced before. Because God doesn't require perfection. He requires willingness. He doesn't require flawless execution. He requires faithful obedience. He doesn't require that you have it all figured out. He requires that you trust him enough to take the first step. So here's my final challenge to you. Here's what I'm asking you to do right now, before you click away from this video, before you move on to the next thing, before you let the moment pass. First, drop a comment below telling me what God is asking you to do. You don't have to give all the details if it's too personal, but write something. Write, I'm taking the step. Write, I'm letting go. Write, I'm saying yes. Write something that makes this real, that makes this concrete, that creates accountability. Second, share this video with at least 3 people who need to hear this message. Not everyone, not your whole friend list, but 3 specific people who God brings to mind, 3 people who you know are hungry for more of God, 3 people who are desperate enough to actually do something with what they hear. Third, set a reminder on your phone for 6 a.m. on February 1st, 2026. And when that alarm goes off, don't hit snooze. Don't roll over and go back to sleep. Get up, do the 30-minute challenge, and then step into whatever God has asked you to do. Fourth, commit to coming back here and leaving a testimony. On February 7th, 1 week into the month, come back to this video and leave a comment telling us what God did, how he moved, how he provided, how he confirmed, how he poured out his spirit. Because your testimony is going to encourage someone else who's scared, who's doubting, who's wondering if they heard correctly. And finally, I want to leave you with this image, this picture that's been burned into my mind since that first night in the oasis. Picture yourself standing in a desert. It's dark, it's cold, it's uncomfortable, and everyone else is walking in a different direction toward what looks like safety, toward what looks like the obvious path, and you're standing there alone, or maybe with just a handful of others, and you're wondering if you heard correctly, if you made the right choice, if you're in the right place. And then, just as doubt starts to creep in, just as you start to second guess yourself, you feel it. Water. Cool, clear, life-giving water bubbling up from the ground beneath your feet. And it starts as a trickle, but it quickly becomes a stream, and then a river. And before you know it, you're standing in the middle of an oasis that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. And people start coming. Thirsty people, desperate people, broken people, lost people. And they drink from the water flowing through you, and they're transformed. They're healed. They're delivered. They're saved. They encounter Jesus in a way they never have before. And you realize that this moment, this place, this obedience, this is what you were created for. This is why God positioned you here. This is the purpose you've been searching for your entire life. That's what's waiting for you in February 2026. That's the promise for those who position themselves where God tells them to be. That's the reward for those who are willing to look foolish, to stand alone, to trust God's voice over the crowd's opinion. So don't miss it. Don't let fear hold you back. Don't let comfort keep you trapped. Don't let the next 48 hours pass without taking action, because you've been marked for this message. You've been chosen for this moment. You've been positioned for this outpouring, and I can't wait to hear your testimony of what God does when you say yes. I'll be praying for you. I'll be believing with you, and I'll be watching for your comments, your testimonies, your stories of how God moved when you positioned yourself where He told you to be. This is Jonathan Roumie, and I'm telling you with everything in me. February 2026 is going to be unlike anything we've ever experienced, but only for those who are willing to listen, willing to obey, willing to position themselves where Jesus is leading. The oasis is waiting. The water is ready to flow. The question is, will you be there to receive it? God bless you. I'll see you in the comments, and I'll see you in the outpouring.